What is the worst thing to step on with bare feet? I stepped on a toothpick when I was 4. The doctors tried to dig it out without any anesthesia. Backwoods doctors, and they still didn't get it all. 2 days later I pulled the toothpick out myself. It was a blue toothpick when it went in and green when it came out, which I thought was interesting. My mother did not, as she had been told by the doctors that they had removed all of it. My 3-year-old daughter dropped a set of metal, sharp-edged dice wands, which she wasn't supposed to be able to reach. I found them all quickly, except for the D4. What followed was a fearful, meticulous search of the area, tidying, moving furniture, checking under everything because I was not going to risk stepping on that thing barefoot. 40 minutes later, I found it. The easy way, thankfully. So relieved. Oh, I've somehow found the worst die to step on. You know how you've got the platonic solids and they all make really good dice? Well, it turns out there's actually another family of irregular solids called the Kepler point-set solids, which A, can serve as perfectly functional and fair dice, and B, are extremely spiky, because their faces are pentagrams, and do not make good dice because of how painful they are to hold. I only know that because I printed one out, specifically the great stellated fucker, and then stepped on it when I accidentally knocked it off my desk. Did I mention that 3D printed objects are like really sharp? 010 would rather step on a D4. You just reminded me of this memory. Me and my cousins were casually playing our chase game and I accidentally ran onto some sharp-edged tokens along with the dice, and there were some Legos too, that my brother was playing earlier and had taken the board but for some reason had not taken others. Reason equals he's a lazy spoiled brat. One step on dice and tokens, the tokens like those triangular roadblocks but pointy. Second step on Legos and next one too on Legos, then I fell on butt straight on Legos and both hands landed on the pointy tokens. Had not walked straight at all that day. It was the ultimate death trap. When I was a kid I had 2 male gerbils. Came home one day after dark, and made my way into my room, which had an overhead pull chain light. I couldn't see anything until I turned it on. As I walked forward, my bare feet kept feeling something weird and wet under them, like tiny gummy bears that popped as I stepped. Turned on the light to find a horrific scene. One of my male gerbils had given birth to a dozen or so babies and somehow had thrown them out of their cage onto the floor. I'd stepped on most of them as I went in. I was around 13 and I just started screaming and crying, and my mom came in to find out what was wrong. She managed to squish the rest of them as she ran to my side. Absolute horror show that has stayed with me for life. Steel chips. I do some very basic machining in my garage while working on building cars. I tend to be very clean and organized, vacuuming up every little chip I cut, but sometimes they escape. One day I left my phone on the charger in the garage. I had just gotten out of the shower and went, "Hey, where is my phone?" I put on a towel and ran into the garage barefoot. I picked up a footful of metal splinters. That sucked. I found that putting Gorilla Tape over splinters, pressing down, and then yanking it off seems to work quite well. Runner-up, old docks and boardwalks. There was some private beach in Massachusetts that I went to as a kid. As long as you had a tag for a town, they'd let you in. There was an old boardwalk and docks. Most people weren't walking on it, which I found odd. I ran along on it to get to the water. Big mistake. Wood splinters like mad. It took a few days to find them all and pull them out with tweezers. Slugs. My parents have a hot tub. When I lived there, I would often go out to the tub late at night. The walkway was very dark, and I would leave my glasses inside, so even if there was some light I still couldn't see. Every once in a while, I would step on a slug on the way out. The worst was when they got squished between my toes. If you've never had the displeasure, slug slime is really clingy. It takes some serious scrubbing to get it off your skin, and it never quite feels clean. Once a mouse and I ran at full speed in opposite directions of each other in my garage. I was avoiding the cold concrete to get to our deep freezer to get a snack. It was probably running to a hiding spot hearing me come in. I accidentally stomped on it. I love mice. My parents call me Mouse as a nickname in my language. I was really sad and still get sad thinking about that. Edit, not opposite direction, the same direction. Oops. I was doing dishes barefoot once and broke a glass. Trapped between the broken dishwasher and counter space beside the sink, I had to try to navigate out of the corner to the broom to clean it up. Cut the tender bits of my feet twice, not deep, but it was one of those glasses that could break into fucking razor shards, and I was half asleep, and had to walk to work later that day. Really sucked. That said, stepping on a used toothpick sticking straight up in the carpet was definitely worse, and Legos are mostly worse. Broken crystal candle holder in the dark entryway. When you're home alone, the EMS dudes were awesome, though, and before my husband could get back home, one had already started mopping up while the others got me on the gurney so the cats weren't in danger while we were at the air. Those guys are the best. In the midnight, I stepped into the kitchen to get some drink. When I entered, I stepped on something with bare feet. It suddenly started rolling under my feet. I was screaming and then I switched on the light to see that it was Lizard's tail cut off. It was worst thing to step on with bare feet, especially in dark. I have stood on a 12-inch rusty nail that went through my foot and didn't even bleed when I pulled it out. Missed every vein. However, the worst was the time my cat broke lampshade from the 60s and I stepped on it. A huge wide chunk went up into my foot. I pulled it out and I started bleeding like crazy. I applied bandage after bandage but they kept getting soaked. I started to feel sick from the blood loss and had to sew my foot back up with needle and thread from the sewing kit. I couldn't walk on that foot for a month. It took that long to heal. A group of friends were at our house for a cookout. After dinner, the hot charcoal was dumped onto a sandy spot in the lawn to cool, but one coal rolled into the grass. One of our guests stepped on that coal with his bare foot. It burned a deep hole into the bottom of his foot and took several months to fully heal. I collect enamel pins and I keep them on a hat. One of the pins came off and I didn't know about it until I stepped on it. Long story short, I had a hole in my foot for a couple days. I still kept the pin. It was a rainbow positive mental attitude pin from Jack Septis. I cleaned it off and put it back on the hat. I walk around barefoot all the time in and around my house. Over the years, I have developed pretty thick soles. I can step on a bottle cap from a beer, ragged side up, and it will mostly just tickle. But there are these bushes from hell in my neighborhood, with thick spiky leaves that fall off and fall and turn to these tough hard, almost tree bark like chips, and those spikes turn to little fucking needles. I've even stepped in glass without getting cut, mostly lucky, but still. And those little needles prick straight through my thick-ass soles, then stay there when you lift your foot up so you get to pull them free yourself. And of course the little fuckers dig in to stay. You have to pull hard. Fucking hurts. Stepping on one of them. Hate those things. I walk around my house in the dark when going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, etc. Never been a problem. The other day I stepped on an upturned thumbtack full force and nearly broke my other ankle. I jumped back so hard, had to hop to turn the light on and pull it from my foot and dripped blood all the way to the first aid cupboard. That was pretty shit, Mel. When I was a kid I used to play in the backyard barefoot a lot in the summer. I DK if it's because I was a dumb kid, or because I have ADHD or what, but I kept accidentally stepping on goddamn thistles. I'd call them pricker plants. The worst ones were the ones that laid flat so they wouldn't get cut if we mowed. I'm not sure if they're a different variety or not, but I swear they're different than the regular ones we have, and they seem thornier. I'd somewhat try to watch out for them, remember where they were and stuff so I wouldn't step on them, but somehow I kept stepping on them anyway. Guess I got distracted too easily and wouldn't look where I was stepping. It sucked. The last straw is when I stepped on something, I think another thistle, got a thorn stuck in my foot so I hobbled towards my house to go inside so I could pull it out. Halfway there I stepped on something else sharp with my other foot. Not sure what it was but kept hurting as I walked, indicating something like a thorn was stuck in it too. So then I had to really awkwardly walk back to my house. Yup, that was enough. Kinda similar to a story above. I was on a beach on holiday with the family, I walked away from them just for a stroll through the sand, etc. I found this stone bench on this high-up wall and I thought it'd be a beautiful view or something. So I sat down thinking about deep stuff and I felt a sensation by my foot and I looked down and didn't quite notice it. So I got nervous and as I stood up to leave, there I saw a nasty little rat squished beneath my feet. It felt like wet mashed potatoes with bits of bone and I can still feel it there when I think about it. We had a shitty man-made pond behind the house I grew up in as a child -100%. The sludgy muck at the bottom was the worst thing to step in ever, not to mention that there were fishing hooks and shit lost within. As I got older I found creative ways to get onto the water without walking in, lol. While some may say Legos, it's not. The worst things to step on are pieces of food matter on the floor or unknown bathroom floor scum, especially in the dark, when you're trying to go to the bathroom or haven't cleaned the kitchen floor yet, and you're getting a late-night snack. Thankfully, I haven't stepped on food waste barefoot. Yet. My sil shot herself in the head last year in the bathroom, suicide. And when the medics came to take her body away they had to move her body onto the bedroom carpet so they could have room to put her in a body bag, and when they did her blood and brains got into the carpet. We put a towel over it so no one would have to see it, but even days later the blood was still wet in the sub-carpet and padding and I stepped on the towel covering it with bare feet, looked down and saw the soles of my feet were dark red, broke down crying. You know the old toy cars that have wheels that are attached with a small metal lining to keep each pair of wheels together. Stepping on one of those with no shoes and it missing a tire. The amount of time and pain it took for me to slowly grudge it out is hands down one of the worst times I've had. And don't even get me started about the time I was jumping on my bed with my brother and there just happened to be a toothpick. Around 12 years old I was running in my yard. Stepped in dog shit barefoot, slipped and literally covered my entire back from ass to head in nasty dog shit. We were leftover feeders to the outside dog. I still remember there being corn between my toes. Fresh dog shit, you know, the big dogs that have turds the size of small dogs. It's large, it's warm, it's moist, it's slippery, it seeps between your toes, under your toenails, and so you're there, hopping on one foot on your way to the nearest water source, trying not to smear shit on your furniture while simultaneously trying to fight your gag reflex to not puke all over the place, holding your breath because if one more molecule of shit enters your nose you're just gonna let it all rip. And that's how you're found, passed out on the floor from self-inflicted asphyxia, covered in dog shit in a puddle of the vomit, with your dog looking at you like you're the asshole. Dog shit, it's the worst thing to step on. I once walked out the door to go smoke a bud with my friends, barefoot. My cat had left a dead rat there, but the thing had already started decomposing. There were maggots everywhere, better on my toes and everything. I soaked my feet in bleach. I know you're not supposed to, but I did and I don't regret it one bit. Oh The usual response is Legos. Worst thing I have personally stepped on was a grass field and proceeded to not shower for 5 days. This caused a plantar wart to form that then turned into 2 warts. I was playing football in high school at the time so I had to run, tackle, and weight lift with the foot that really hurt. Let me tell you, plantar warts and football cleats don't mix. They got bigger and more painful as the weeks went by because I was too scared to tell my parents. Eventually went to the podiatrist or foot doctor and he proceeded to remove them both. If you've never had the plantar wart it's hard to imagine the pain. After removal, basically my entire foot pad was a gaping hole. The hole didn't completely fill back in for a full week, which really sucks if you're dealing with high school and football games as the only cornerback on the team. Now I'm prone to getting them. Backstory to not showering for a week is that I was at a football camp. I refused to shower in an open stall as a 17-year-old around 100 other guys, with only 4 shower stalls. Had a sleepover with a couple friends a while back. It was like 5 a.m. and one of the 2 friends and I were still amped up on caffeine. but the other was exhausted and ready to sleep. After tormenting him for about a half hour, we decided to go for a walk outside and let him rest for a while. I wasn't wearing any socks and I didn't feel like putting any on just to wear shoes, so I went out with bare feet. We only got to the end of the street and I felt myself step on something slimy and cold. It was a slug. It felt disgusting and a healthy portion of mucus was stuck to my foot until we got back to the house, where it took a surprising amount of effort to wash off after being squashed and stuck to the bottom of my foot. A very traumatic experience indeed. I felt a splinter in my foot last summer. It was sort of painful and I couldn't quite get it with tweezers, so I figured it would work its way out. Nope. It hurt more than a usual splinter any time I put weight on it. Not terrible, but enough for me to be conscious of it each time I took a step or rose onto the ball of my foot. It was driving me crazy, and after a week of futile digging at my foot with tweezers, had the idea to try extracting it with nail clippers. It worked. Except it wasn't a shard of wood. It was one of my boyfriend's beard hairs, which had all been shaved off the day before I first felt the fucker in my foot. I called him over and he insisted that the actual splinter must have fallen away and the hair had fallen onto the nail clippers at that same instant. Ha! Not sure what was worse. I was wearing stockings, had just dewormed my dog. I fell down the stairs directly into a pile of worm shit, went through the stockings and I was freaking out trying to get them off. Or I was at a theme park and wearing flip-flops. That alone was stupid, but as I was walking, someone threw a lit cigarettes in my path. It burned through my soul directly into my foot. Terracotta floor tiles on a hot summer's day. Apocalyptically hot. My feet hurt for days after, and I only walked less than 6 feet to get from the basketball court to the canteen. Oyster bed. Do not recommend. Getting them removed is a whole other world of pain. Still have bits in my feet. 17 years on. Fuck, I'm old. I have a phobia of stepping on broken glass. When I was little, someone threw a rock through my bedroom window at night. I jumped out of bed and ran into the hallway, stepping on the broken pieces of the window. I had to get 43 stitches in my tiny feet, almost lost a toe, and it took nearly a month to all heal. If I drop a bottle or a glass on the floor, part of my brain just starts to go into full panic mode, even now. For me, it's been a shard of glass. I used to walk across the back porch to get to my mom's room, and my stepdad was an abusive, vindictive coward, and he threw something made of glass out there one day and I later stepped on it. I had a long shard of glass in my foot. I tried to pull it out, but my fingers became so covered in blood they started sticking together, so I had to lay in the floor while my mom dug us out and had to probe the wound and remove several tiny invisible pieces that broken off. Pretty miserable time. If anything is more painful than this, I can't fucking wait to hear it. I stepped on a 12-pack of long tacks in bare feet while walking down the basement stairs, which is significant, because all of weight was on the bottom foot. These weren't the crappy standard thumbtacks. These were the 3/4 inch kind with round heads, and still in the package, with an open top, so they didn't separate when I stepped on them. No. It's not like a bed of nails, where the more there are, the less likely it is to penetrate the skin. 11 of the 12 went in at least 1/4 inch. Most of them 1/2 inch. When I was young, I took a girlfriend fishing at the local reservoir. Walking back to my car, she stepped on the shard of a Coke bottle. This was in the late 60s when they were real thick. It was the bottom disc of the bottle and part of one side, broken into a point. It went right through her sneakers and her foot and the top of her sneakers. I had to rush her to the hospital. I didn't pull the shard out as I didn't want her to bleed to death. She recovered pretty well, with only a slight limp. She did break up with me, though. I think her parents somehow decided it was my fault. I imagine it would have gone about the same if she was barefooted. Edge of wood. My sister's bed can go under my bed, but it can't have wheels because my bed is low as freak, so it has the wood things to support the mattress. Sometimes it is out of place, and then when I'm running to my PC jumping my sister's bed, sometimes I step on one of the edges, with bare foot, it hurts a lot, or a rusty nail.